We're scheduled to start,
so okay.
We'll just start right away.
All right.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andrei Kunov, and I'm the president of Silicon Valley Innovation Center, the organization which is today. Thank you for coming. And our company organizes executive education programs here in Silicon Valley for overseas clients. That's what we're doing today. We have a great speaker from Mosby. He's the director of Keiretsu Forum Academy.
Yes.
Right, that's what you do.
That's kind of what I do.
Dave has spent a big portion of his professional life working with that.
Is that me?
It's your, yeah.
Sorry. Excuse me.
You can just put it in. Okay.
So can I press some button and say put it in standby and then? Okay. I'll stand up. So that helps solve that problem. Okay, I'll behave myself.
So I'm not going to spend much time introducing you. I think you could do it even better yourself than what you do, and the whole your talk is actually going to be about what you do at
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
well,
please.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
This is a great opportunity. We're going to manage some of the technology stuff here. But the first thing I wanted to do was to let you know that anybody that's registered, we're going to send out copies of the PowerPoint if anybody cares about it. So we're going to make that available. And I don't know whether or not video of what we're doing tonight is going to be
available to everyone.
It'll be available as well? Great. So in order to make this, we've got to, so number one, who are you? You know, what's your name? So other people can get your name. Where do you work? What outcomes do you produce and for whom? And what do you want as a takeaway? So you got 30 seconds to answer those 4 or 5 questions. So let me start with this young lady right here in the front. So your name, where do you work? Now, of course, I'm going to pick on you. You just took a bite of your sandwich. So what outcomes do you produce? So this is very purposeful. What outcomes do you produce and for whom? And what would you like to take away from the evening? Okay? So your name.
I'm Cheryl Mitchell. I'm a consultant. My business is called Your Business Ninja. I work behind the scenes with especially C-level people about they're either buying a business, trying to sell their business, or expand their business a certain way. And my outcomes are to help them get those results the way they want them in the time frame they want them. And I'm also about to join a startup. So my from this session is to figure out how to do a better pitch. We've done a few that haven't gone so well.
Okay.
But also, we just want to do it in a good way that people understand what we're talking about without anyone that's doing it.
Got it. Thank you. Sylvester.
My name is Sylvester, and I
Here,
develop games.
Sylvester. There you go. Use that.
Hi. I develop games, mobile games. We work for hire. This year we switched from working for hire to making our own titles. And I want to learn how to make a great pitch.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, this gentleman. Okay, get up here and just come right over and get you in whatever this video stuff is.
Hi, my name is Vasily Nikolaev. I'm the CEO of Nanoptic Devices. It's a Russian-American company developing technology of digital planar holograms, basically optical chips. Our first product is the smallest spectrometer on the market, and next we'll be developing small sensors based on spectroscopy, like analysis of gas, biomedical, and many other, the smallest sensors in the world.
Great. So what do you want to take away?
We're now raising a new round of funding, so just learn to pitch better.
Great. Thank you. Who's next? Come on, young lady. Get up here. Okay, who are you? Where do you work? And what outcomes do you produce for whom?
This is my book, Meet Your Happy Chemicals, one of my books. Is this working?
Yeah, I think so.
So my organization is called the Intermammal Institute, intermammalinstitute.org. And what I do is help people understand their brain chemicals. The brain chemicals that make us happy are inherited from earlier animals. And when we know how they work in animals, it makes I would like,
What you want to take away is?
I'm looking for partners in the healthcare profession, and so I want to make pitches to that.
Your name was?
Loretta Bruce.
Loretta. Great. Thanks, Loretta. And next was, okay,
Double check the mic.
okay.
Seems to be working.
There it goes. Oh. Okay. Yeah, your.
My name is Pablo.
Great. Yes.
Great. I work for McAfee, the company. What I do there, I'm director for new product innovations. So what I basically do is create, which are the outputs of my jobs, are new business or new product opportunities. And to whom I produce in there is to execs. So are we expecting from this is doing the pitch is something that we do. So it's something I would like to continuously improve. And the title, The Perfect Pitch, catch me attention. So I hope to see the perfect pitch.
Great. Okay. And your colleague.
Hi, my name is Leandro. I also work for McAfee, but on the engineering side. I manage a couple of teams of the pathfinding and consumer mobile division. So I validate technically the projects that we are trying to develop, and our target consumer is product management. In this case is Pablo. So the outcome of I would like to get from this workshop is to improve my pitch techniques, because that's part of my daily life.
Great. Thank you very much. So who's next? Come on up. Come on down. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Anthony James. I work for NetApp. I'm working with their planning and business improvement team, reporting to the CIO. We look at the processes in place in the company and analyze the data and try how to improve them. From this session, with my limited knowledge, I think it's all about pitching,
Yes.
and I would like to know about the new architecture of pitching.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So we've now got a couple of folks from really large companies, NetApp and McAfee, and we've got people from various companies. So who else? Who's next? Oh yeah, come on up here. Don't be shy. You're among friends. That's the one nice thing here. Okay, there you go. So take that.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Alina, and I'm a co-founder of Skill Gravity. For enterprises, we provide a platform that helps to utilize the skill sets and talents of employees in a much better way. So we provide a skill finding solution, an intelligent search engine of talents inside of the corporation, and ability to participate in different topics of discussion for employees beyond the area of the actual work they were assigned for. Right now, we are raising a seed round of investment here to learn how to pitch in a perfect way.
So thank you very much. So just that happened, an area of great interest to me. So the whole thing about the rapid change in large and the burden of learning, so being able to keep track of who and where they are. So I'm excited to hear about that. So go sit down and we'll get you put to work. So who's next? Young lady in the back, here you go. Get on and come on down here. This is The Price is Right or something. I don't know. I never had time to watch game shows on TV, so.
Hi, my name is Christina Cruz Schultz. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll actually find it as a troubleshooter on Scooter. I'm based in San Francisco. I put together events. I'm here so that I could get to know more about this place and the events that you have here, and also to build relationships, and also hopefully I learn better on how to pitch. I only learned from Toastmaster, and I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to learn from this event. And also what I expect to take away is to engage people better.
Great, thank you. Okay, this is great. Thank you all. So there's a new person back here. Are you going to introduce yourself, or are you with her?
I work here.
Sorry. So I don't know everybody who works here yet. I'm just a beginner. I just look old. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jacqueline. I've got 6-7 years experience in the travel industry, and the last 3 years were at Google. I just started my MBA at Schultz International Business School, but in the last couple of years in my spare time I've been creating my own website, which is a travel website, which is basically one place where you can do everything. So you put in what you're looking for. Say I'm a single mom with a child, don't want to spend too much, I want to go to the USA to a beach. It will just return the results for what you're looking in the month of May. So I'll be taking the ITA data from Google and using the search database from Expedia and categorize everything into a large database. Say if you're a gay person with a dog, you want to stay in a gay-friendly hotel in a gay-friendly city, which is also dog-friendly, it will just return the results that you're looking for. So it also has guides so that you don't have to go to the Lonely Planet afterwards. You can just print them off or look at them on your mobile app. And it also has reviews that you can leave once you booked your hotel or your flight. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so, what is your target outcome?
So I want to get some funding. I've been funding it myself the last couple of years, so it's been a huge drain in my pocket. And I'm.
Oh, really?
So
anybody else have that problem?
So I have never pitched to an investor, and I need to start doing that.
Great.
So I want to learn how to do that.
So one of the things. Thank you very much. So one of the things that you all need to remember. Maybe nobody ever told you. But those of you who are entrepreneurs, started businesses, you're the first investors. So when you got it started, Andre, Silicon Valley Innovation Center, you already had a vision for the outcome. And that brings up a question where I'm going to deal with in a couple minutes, which is I want all of you to be thinking about what's the structural difference between an expense and an investment. Yes, ma'am. So are you going to... What? So you're on the hook. Okay, there you go.
Hi, I'm Marina. I'm really interested in this topic. I did several pitches, different kind of pitches for interesting companies like International Olympic Committee, international PR outreach campaigns, or Duolingo. I don't know how many of you have heard of that startup. They do amazing online language learning program, completely free, and you can learn any language. I'm not pitching it right now. It's a great company, I just wanted to share. I'm just very interested in this topic in general, and I hope to learn more about all sorts of pitches, including how to impress investors.
A perfect pitch?
Exactly.
Great, that's what I want. Thank you. Okay, so I think the last person is Doreen. So yes, I can see that far, but it's really getting tough.
Hi, my name is Doreen, and I'm one of the co-founders of a product called Steer. We are trying to reduce the amount of time consumers spend online searching for information before we buy a product. And the outcome from this...
So who you are, here's where you work, so what's your target outcome from today? So you want to be able, the outcome you want to deliver to your customers is faster access to decisions.
Yes,
True?
Fast access to decisions.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good. And from this pitch event, I want to learn how, we are a bootstrap startup, and we want to scale and we want to pitch to investors. So I want to learn how to do that.
Great. Thank you very much, Doreen. So I guess, so is there anybody else that's here as that's not part of SIVC or SVIC? Okay, so I'm going to turn this off. Turn that off. It's off. So thank you. So I suspect that it's only fair, since I asked each of you those 4 or 5 questions, that I probably take a second to answer them myself. So my name is Dave Mosby, so you can call me Dave. I'm the founder of Keiretsu Forum Academy. Got started about 2 years ago, specifically as a result of the vision of Randy Williams, who is the founder of Keiretsu Forum, the world's largest angel investor network that has about 35 chapters around the world and rapidly closing on 16, 17 accredited investors in all of those 35 chapters. And it's growing at about 10% a year. So there's more chapters showing up all the time. The mission for Keiretsu Forum Academy is to equip entrepreneurs, investors, and people from innovation centers to resonate with each other to accelerate economic development. So let me get simple and say tonight the job is to work with each of you who is entrepreneur to accelerate your access to capital and resources that you need to grow your business. Everybody ready? So let me hear a cheer. Okay, that's what we're here for. Okay? So that's the outcomes. So in the last 2 years, the outcomes have been produced is an alumni group that's now over 250 people and nominally 250 companies. Of those 250 companies, about 16 have decided they wanted to actually go raise money. Many of the others have said, this is too hard, we're going to go do something else. Of the 16 that have gone on to Keiretsu Forum, 14 have money. So what we're going to talk about is a piece of a program that is actually making a very compelling difference in the lives of people. And I couldn't be any happier doing that. So what I hope to take away tonight is the delight of making a positive contribution into your lives and having the opportunity to learn from you. So without any further ado, what I want to do is to kind of set the context. So perfect pitch, how to resonate with investors. I want to show you a video or a piece of one, if I can make the technology work. And I may not. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. I will show you a video later. But so what resonate means. So somebody give me, so how do, Jacqueline? Jacqueline? So tell us about resonate. What does that mean?
It's like strike a chord with it. So you strike a chord with someone, it means you connect with them. It's something that excites them.
So it's one of those kind of ephemeral things. So because it's an behavior, it's an induced outcome. So when the vibrations are right, then you can cause a wine glass to blow up. What you want to be able to do is to speak and present yourself in a way that investors get the message and they can harmonize with what it is that you want to speak about. Okay? Now, some of you are dealing with your early stage businesses, and so you're really dealing with investors, but there's another class of investors that others and all of us do sooner or later, which is management. So oftentimes that's like a curse word, but the reality is that managers within McAfee or NetApp or Oracle or Intel or Apple, all managers have a core task, which is to allocate resources based upon some target outcomes. So and investors are aligned in that. The only difference is the specifics of the outcomes they're trying to produce. In both cases, investors don't have unlimited resources, so you have to bid for the resources available. The same thing happens for managers, directors, and executives at big companies. So it's really important to keep both of these things, and I'll try to, but it's essential to understand that investors have seed corn. They have to figure out where they're going to plant. And nobody has an unlimited source, so I'm going to try and equip you to be better prepared to get more seed corn than anybody else. Okay, fair enough? So the next thing is, the reason that we created Keiretsu Forum Academy, and this happens in enterprises around the world as well, it's fewer than 10% of the entrepreneurs, people requesting resources, resonate with the investors. The staff, less than 10% of the staff, resonates with management. So anybody working in a big company says there's some people who seem to get more resources than others. Does that happen? Yeah? So can I unring a little bit?
Don't worry about it.
I'll just keep going? Okay. So anybody identify with this? Okay, so what we're going to do is address this issue, which is entrepreneurs, staff, often, most often, fail to really hear, understand, and respond to what investors' key question is. So anybody want to toss out some, what do you think are investors' key question? They really have one, and it's universal. So what do you think? So that's all part of it. Any other comments? So one is make money. Another is break even. When is... So let's step through this. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Time period.
How much money you need?
How will you be the leader? Best.
They're all great questions. Doreen? Pardon?
Exit strategy.
We're going to get there.
What's the problem you're solving?
Yeah. So Doreen?
Will I get my money back?
Oh! There you go. So you get the silver bullet. So the key is, what's the likelihood? And so I want to take this a line at a time. So as investors, you started your business, you asked yourself, but you may not remember that you did this. What is the likelihood I'm going to get whatever my capital, my investment is, what's the likelihood I'm going to get that back at a multiple that's okay with me? Right? That's investors' key question. All of the other stuff is just, how am I going to make the judgment? So what's the likelihood? Likelihood is a judgment. That's an assessment. So all of these other questions are pieces and contributors to that likelihood. Well, other contributors are, so personal experience was a few years ago, I was out raising money for a company that was already generating revenue in the web application space. So in 1999, I had created a web application which was essentially a functional equivalent. So imagine what it would be like to have Facebook for amateur sports. So you have all the functionality. 99. So I go to Sand Hill Road, which is where all of you either have been or are going, and I show up, and so people love. So yeah, there's a huge problem. Amateur sports are a pain in the neck, and the web can help improve communications and blah, 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 blah. But the next day, my spy at the venture firm says, they loved what you were doing, but they couldn't figure out how somebody with that much gray hair could have a clue what the internet was about. Oh, stake in my heart. However, that very same kind of thing is going on with each and every one of you on a different thread. But they were looking at it and said the likelihood that they could get their capital back was impaired because of my apparent age. I mean, I was only like 35 then. I'm only 39 now, so what I'm getting at here, so the things that we tend to lead with are all components of providing support for convincing investors that they can trust you to get their capital back at a multiple that's okay with them. Now, okay, are investors greedy? What's the deal? What is this multiple thing? So when you go to debt financing to get money from a bank, for instance, they either won't talk to you at all or they're going to charge you some interest rate. So the interest rate is a function of their assessment of the risk about this likelihood thing. And so the reason they mostly say no is because the risk profile they're allowed to take these days doesn't allow them to mess around with early stage businesses. Even if they love it, they can't do it. So investors say, given the failure rate of early stage businesses, and it's just statistics, given the statistics about early business failure, they're absorbing an enormous amount of risk on their seed corn. So they're going to want to make sure that when they plant their seed, when they give you the seed corn and you plant it, that wherever it's going to be enormous yield. Making sense? So it's not like they're being greedy. It's just there's a risk, reward, got to get it because I've got to invest in 20 companies for me to have any reasonable expectation of getting my money back. Any questions, comments, protests? Is this making sense? So protests are perfectly okay. So it's important for me to be, so if you got questions or you think, who was it I was talking to about the BS stuff? Yeah, so Sylvester, so when I say stuff that doesn't ring true to you, stop me and say, okay, that doesn't sound like it doesn't work for me. Okay? So perfect pitch is architecture for how to tell your story in a way that resonates with investors. So it might merit taking a few minutes to tell you the story about where this came from. So I have been an entrepreneur most of my life. My first venture was 8 years old, and I lived in San Diego, and people would go on vacation and come back home, and their yards would be dead. Nobody had automatic sprinklers in the caveman days. So I'm 8 years old. Nobody in my family had any money, including me. So I said, how am I going to solve this problem? I want to get a guitar. So rock and roll was just beginning to show up. And I said, I got to learn to play guitar. So I said, I'm going to go see if anybody will pay me to water their lawns when they go on vacation. Can you believe it? I actually got people to give me money to water the lawn and to play in the water. So I'm 8 years old. So what else do you do when you're 8? So I took that money and bought myself a guitar. So I was hooked. At that time I knew I had the genetic defect for entrepreneurship, and that was that. So many years later, in about 4 years, I started doing work with Keiretsu Forum. And I'd go to the pitch events, and I'd see, people giving pitches and just tanking and thinking, just like sometimes people made just judgments, how could somebody with this much gray hair have a clue about the internet? What I felt like I was doing was looking through that same lens and seeing people have good business ideas told. And so I started paying attention, not as an investor and not as an entrepreneur. So I sat there and I started watching people's behavior. You can see when somebody's whenever you're giving a talk somewhere, there's people who get it and people who don't. So I started watching and observing patterns of behavior and trying to find that common thread for the people who resonated with investors. And so the results of that research, as unscientific as it may have been, is basically where we're going to talk about the components that we have here. So think about this as there's 3 major components that we're going to deal with, and I'm going to try and pull your in. So the first is, well, what is the content that you need to be able to share with people? What is the structure within which you can share that content that will have the highest probability of resonating? And then what do you have to do to get ready to deal with both of those issues? Does that make sense? Any questions about that? So we're going to go through the content, and we're going to take what I do is I'll work with 2 or 3 of each of you to sort through the content issues. Then we're going to talk about the structure, how to structure and schedule your time if you know how much time you're going to have. And then how do you get yourself prepared to make the best impact in that time that's available. So the first thing is content. Now, the first thing, so I'm not going to speak about the order at this point. So a thing that must be communicated at some point is what is the idea that you have. Now, big idea, premise, story, what does that really mean? So anybody have any idea what I mean, what I might mean when I say structure down? Okay, so I'm going to try and explain. So a structural breakdown is something that is the way the world works. I can't do that I want to do. So that's the breakdown. The breakdown part is I can't do what I want to do. Structural is the way the world works today. This piece of pain exists. When you can find something where it works and I have this pain, what that means is there's an opening to create economic and social value. Let me give you an example. So the product that I talked about, the league management system, the structural problem was, and continues today, that the administrative overhead for amateur sports leagues is a deterrent to recruiting volunteers. Nobody wants to be a volunteer, coach, or judge, or whatever, in virtually any sport, because they know they're going to get caught up in a bunch of administrative overhead. So that's a deterrent. It's structural. You have to have all those people. They have to communicate, but they can't without some of these resources. Does that make sense? So let me pick on Jacqueline. So if you had to characterize the structural breakdown that you're setting out to fix, give that a try.
So the frustration at the moment is when you want to go on vacation, you have to go to a lot of different websites to find what you're specifically looking for. Say if you want to go diving in Asia, you'd have to go to the Lonely Planet to read about the good dive sites. You'd have to go to TripAdvisor to read reviews on those dive sites. You'd have to go to Expedia to find a hotel. You'd have to go to Priceline to find a car. You'd have to go to Kayak to find a flight. And then you have to read all the content on all of those sites, hone down on the one that's child-friendly or the one that's accessible. So my idea is to solve the problem of having to look all over the internet and spending a huge amount of time and stress going to multiple sites, having it all in one place, returning the results that you want.
Okay, so did everybody heard all of that, all of those words?
Sorry.
No. So it's okay. So there's nothing to apologize. What you've just done is what all of us have been originally trained to do. But our training has all been out of the mythology of entrepreneurship in Silicon Valley. So what you were really focused on was your product. So when you can back away from the product and say, looking for personalized vacation experience have no resources to do that easily. So that was far smaller number of words, really focused. That's probably not right, but it's righter. Oh, it's more accessible to a broader set of people. And you have to remember that as evil as it seems that investors may be, they're people first. And the reality is especially angel investors, they have a deep desire to invest in your company. They're doing this on purpose, and they're writing checks out of their own pocketbook. The difference between angel investors and venture investors is that venture funds make decisions on the resource allocation of somebody else's money. Okay? This is also a problem that needs to be understood in the context of enterprise circumstances. So managers, executives, directors, and such, they're allocating resources. Those resources are oftentimes somebody else's. Most companies are very sketchy about how they hold people accountable for decisions. Got it? Does that make sense? Let me pick on Pablo.
Yeah.
So just pick a product or a project that you've worked on recently and see if you, here's what the structural breakdown was with something that we were just doing.
Or I can give you.
Okay.
Let me tell you. One example of what you're doing is that you're saying is my output is product opportunities. So I think the problem is how to find the right product opportunity that will lead to a right product. The majority of the time. The problem is there are ideas that fail.
Yes.
How to identify the ones that are not going to fail.
So that's what investors are doing every day. So they're listening to you, and your managers are listening to you because they figure out whether or not what you're suggesting has a likelihood that they're going to get resources back at a multiple that's okay for the context. So you hear about all these models and stuff. They're interesting but not complete. What they're really concerned with is the leadership capability of the people that they're allocating resources to. And so this plays in to Anthony's situation, which is here's a company that's trying to figure out how do we empower our leaders to actually both present and understand what's presented. So there's a structural problem that exists in most enterprises, most large companies, which is that information flows are insufficient to help people make effective decisions. So there's practices, and some of them we're going to talk about. Okay? So thank you for that. The first step, one of the key things you need to do, in whichever order you do, you have to be clear about what's the business premise. So if you're working in an HR department, HR in the IT section that supports HR, for instance, what is the business case for the things that the people in HR are asking for? Business case for somebody who's doing a holiday search. Okay? You need to be really clear about what's going to be the economic value to those people that you think are going to benefit from your product. And the same thing for Doreen. Okay? The next thing that you need to be abundantly clear on is what is the money or resources that I need to be able to get the best contribution from solving this big idea problem. Okay? So let me give you an example. So there was a guy that I saw give a presentation a while ago. The problem was there are people who are dying of MRSA. MRSA is a hospital-acquired infection. People who have cystic fibrosis spend time in the hospital because they have a genetic predisposition to issues. So when somebody who has cystic fibrosis goes to the hospital and acquires MRSA, they lose 20% of their life expectancy. It's very treat. So that was the symptom. The structural problem was there was no available therapies to that. So they figured out a mechanism, and they were very clear. What they needed was $13 million to finish their prototypes, and for $1, but the rest of it was to be able to get through FDA certification requirements. Okay? So they knew how much money they needed. So let's talk about, say, is going to implement a new payroll system. Okay? So somebody says, we need to have a new payroll system. Sometimes people know why they need a new payroll system. Often they don't. But when you're properly equipped, you can ask questions that qualify that allow you to lead people through the process of validating, here's the target outcomes from this new thing. So that's how you begin to say, here's how much money we need to make that new payroll system show up. Does that make sense? So, or executives or managers, you need to know money and what other resources. So other resources can be computing resources, they can be people resources, they can be training resources, they can be helper resources of one sort or another. But it's incumbent upon you, the presenter, to be prepared to answer the question, what do you need to make this successful? And you need to know what is the measure of this. Got it? So when you're leading a new business, you define them. In the other context, you need to discover them. And if you can't make any promises about outcomes. And what happens, so having been an enterprise IT guy, the absence of clarity with regard to target outcomes is the biggest single source of engagement failures and delivery failures in enterprise solutions. Been there, done that, had that problem. So, but you need to be abundantly clear on this. Okay, another thing that you need is, so if you have all of this, whatever this is, what exactly are you going to do with it? Now that doesn't necessarily mean here's what the schedule is going to be, but what are the outcomes that you're going to produce, and what are the milestones that you're going to achieve that demonstrate that you're on track to produce the final outcomes. What I'm suggesting here is that in both the entrepreneur case and in the enterprise case, the focus is not on what activities are you going to perform, but what outcomes are you going to produce. As an executive, as a CEO, so I ran a public company for 4 years, grew it by a factor of 25x, 25 times. The market 25. I was relentlessly focused on improving outcomes. I didn't really care much about how you did it as long as it was consistent with the vision and values of my company. And so what happens with and executives is they want to be able to know what are the outcomes that you're going to produce. And if you're able to think this through, you can't figure out what are the key outcomes you need to produce. Does that make sense? Does that tie together? Once you've been able to say, here's our target outcome, that's the big idea. Here's what I need to produce that target outcome. Here's what I do with what I need. And then you say, the investors or the manager, how are they going to get paid? So the first time I went out to raise money, which was in 1980, I had this, made perfectly good sense. So that investors just wanted to have shares in my stock, shares in my company. That there was some kind of magic thing about, oh, okay, so if you own a bunch of shares of my company, that's a really good thing. So I've been, people tell me, oh, I own 5,000 shares of IBM and blah, 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 blah. And I thought, oh, okay, that's good. I made a big mistake. And the mistake was nobody really cares about owning shares in your company. What they care about is, what do they care about? What?
Making money.
How are they going to make money? What do they care about? Keep coming. What do they care about? You're getting close, but you need to hit the nail squarely on the head with a very big hammer.
They want you to sell your company and make money.
That's what they want. So when you're a manager, what you want is a successful implementation project, that's where the payoff is. That's what we get all caught up in the mechanics of ROI and blah, 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 blah. It's not the economic returns that matter. So you ask yourself the question, what is the difference between an investor, a lender, and a philanthropist? So they're really not much different. They want to get their money back. They want to get some specific return that they may or may not have told you about. They want to get their stuff back at a multiple that's okay with them. So what that means is that if you don't have a clear vision and a plan that's going to enable the investors to get their money back, they're not going to talk to you. Or they won't, they may listen to you, but when you say, here's my great plan, here's my great product, my great project, they'll hear it, but they don't yet believe that you have the wherewithal to actually make a positive outcome happen. They don't know what they really want. And when you learn what they really want to be able, they have to, it's not like a choice. So when you've got seed corn, what you got to do is to grow the corn and then you take it to market. Well, if you just watch it there in the field, what's going to happen? It's going to rot. And that happens right and left. So when you're asking investors to give you some resources, you need to tell them, have in your head, they're going to get their resources back at a multiple that's okay. So let me give you a specific example. So one of the things is that there's a company called Perkville. So Perkville is a software company that supports loyalty systems for gyms, athletic facilities. Interesting niche. So when I was working with them, the thing that we needed to do was to say, who's going to buy Perkville or part of it? And what are the kinds of terms? So we started doing some research and said, oh, well, it's possible for it to get acquired by Nike. Why would Nike acquire it? So blah, 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 down here. It could be a publisher like Men or like something of that sort. So we created some scenarios and did the research to say who is currently is engaged in acquiring companies. Okay. So what we did was we said, here's the way for investors to get paid back. Now, when you're doing something of this sort inside an enterprise context, one of the things that you need to do is to be able to point out, where possible, how the benefits have played out for other companies that have gotten the kind of results that you're predicting. So I, as a CEO, want to know that you have thought through and there's reasons to believe that the benefits that I expect are actually achievable. Because if you haven't done that inside McAfee or NetApp or Intel or Apple, the thing is that your product is either not going to be approved or project, going to be approved with burdensome oversight that will improve the likelihood that it fails. Anybody seen that before? I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Okay? So, here we go. Big idea. How much money do I need? What am I going to do with the money? How are my investors, whoever they happen to be, how are they going to get paid? Now, everything else that you talk about is risk mitigation to this outcome. So those of you or those of us who tend to lead with our product, the first thing that we say is the thing that puts us in the mud already. Because the only value of your product to an investor is the likelihood that it improves the probability that this is actually going to happen. So when you ask an investor, where are you investing or what do you really like? they're going to respond, and the reason they will make choices that happen to be popular with others is that there's some higher level of belief that the probability of a positive outcome is higher. It's not that they like it at all. Get it? So if somebody says they're investing in healthcare, okay, so you've now got somebody that was a CEO of Sutter Health. He's a direct investor and he invests in healthcare. Why? Because he knows how to assess the risks in healthcare. Okay? He may not be the CEO of Sutter Health because he hated that industry. And this really happens. You need to understand that your product is only one of a suite of risk mitigation strategies. Okay? Next. The next thing is, so investors have to make bets on people. And it doesn't matter whether it's Apple, Intel, or whomever. Because people are the ones who make things happen. A great product plan is great because there's somebody who created that product plan, and who created that product plan likely wherewithal to execute it. So when you're speaking to investors, the reason this plan is important is that it improves the likelihood of a positive outcome because you've already demonstrated you've thought through all the stuff. The business plan itself is of no consequential value because nobody's going to execute it anyway. The issue is going to be you've got a business plan that's demonstrated that somebody has thought through various corners and angles, and there's a reasonable hope something of that sort can actually come to play. Am I breaking anybody's sacred cows, beliefs, myths? So it's essential to have a business plan, not because it's right, but because it demonstrates how you think and where your commitments lie. So if you make a business plan that's completely weighted towards sales and marketing, that's somebody who makes a living by allocating seed corn. If your business plan is unconsciously weighted towards product, reveals the same thing. If it's you've got 42 pages of financial spreadsheets, it reveals that you've got a financial bias and you probably can't sell squat. Okay? So the things that investors are looking at than what they tell you. And oftentimes they don't even realize it themselves. Again, investors are people first. So you need to be able to say with clarity, here's me, here's why I should be trusted to get you your seed corn yield that you want. Here's my team, and my team has been able to do blah, 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 blah. Now, the market is big enough to generate this result. Our product, so this is an old slide. So the market and the product, this is the thing that most people lead with, and it needs to come way after you've identified what it is the outcome's going to be. So here's me, here's my team, here's the market, here's my product, here's my intellectual property plan, here's my go-to-market plan. I don't give a whit about strategies. Strategies don't get executed. Plans do. So having this great social networking strategy to promote our stuff, what are you going to do? What action are you going to take? What outcomes are you going to accept accountability? I want specifics, I want clarity, I want focus. And it doesn't matter who I am as an investor. Okay? Think about this in the context of how you do recruiting. Because the recruiting is, in early stage companies especially, and even in large enterprise, when you really want to hire really good people, you have to get them from where they already are. Okay? And so you have to seduce them into a new possibility for growth. You better understand what their target outcomes are, or you're lost. Otherwise, you're just stuck with money. And that doesn't do it, especially anymore. It helps, but it's not sufficient. So the things that you're learning, what was the question that I asked a while ago? I posed a dilemma. So what's the difference between what and what? What was that question? This is a great time for us to talk about that. So what was it? So I said, what's the between what?
Expense and investment.
Yeah, so what, anybody, did we talk about that and I forgot about it, or is it good? Excuse me. What is that?
My apologies.
Did I do that? So I have one of those fart machines that I take to meetings, and it's always gotten me in a lot of trouble, but it's absolutely hysterical. So that's what it feels like, somebody's doing that to me. Anyway, so the difference between an investor, so I'm not going to test you terribly because this is a trick question. The reality is the only difference between an expense and an investment is to time the value. So it's time to value. Okay, so an expense has an expectation of immediate value. So I go buy a computer, that's an expense because I expect to get immediate value. Okay? That is immediate gratification in psychological terms. An investment, a delay in the time. So I don't expect to experience the value for some period of time. So this allows you to you have a mental model that you can apply with any amount of money and in virtually any or any context. So if you're about to write a check and you're trying to make the mental decision, is this an expense or an investment? Yes, go ahead.
Question.
Yeah.
Would you say that marriage is expense or investment?
No. No. The best thing I can say, it is rewarding and costly. So, yes, it's a pricey investment. Use the word expense, although maybe,
You get
sometimes there's some immediate gratification, sometimes there isn't. So, but that's from somebody. This November, I'll be celebrating my 30th wedding anniversary. So, my poor wife had to become a marriage and family deal with. Can you imagine what it's like trying to deal with this crazy man? So my point is that the things that you feel emotionally drawn to talk about are exactly the wrong things to lead with. Everybody got that? The most important thing to an investor is to be able to believe that you have their interests at heart. And their interests are that exit. Now, exits can take many forms, far longer conversation. But the thing is that the thing that's important for you to understand is whenever you're having a conversation with an investor, and by the way, there's no such thing as an informal conversation with an investor. It just doesn't exist. Because investors always have that likelihood. So, yes.
So I'm showing in my case in the corporation, I'm not able to sell myself or get like fresh money, but
So start your question over.
yeah. So in the corporation, I'm not
Yes.
able to get like fresh money myself. So I'm part of the chain. So like I think investors are like putting resources with me to save money. Because I'm validating with users sooner. So the structural problem is that they were investing in huge projects blindly. They didn't validate. So we have like tiger teams to validate faster, learn faster, fail fast. So the value I'm delivering is like they are saving money. So do you see a difference with investors that they are getting paid, that with at least in my case, they are saving?
So I'm going to, this is where the sledgehammer comes out against a sacred cow, which is they're not, the target outcome is not saving money. Their real target outcome is reducing their risk. Okay, so the structural problem is whatever you're doing now has them be living with a level of unacceptable uncertainty. And they mask over that uncertainty by checks. They're creating expenses. So what you're doing is replacing that uncertainty with a higher degree of certainty. So that's the structural repair, is that if you do this, you will reduce or eliminate the risk that you're paying for right now. Now, you have to bear in mind, there's some people who are managers who are not going to connect with this kind of thinking. So people who are really fixated on doing rather than outcomes have a really hard time making this switch. So many times you'll find managers and business leaders who are not the investors they're being paid to be. So that's where there's tips and techniques that actually come into play. But you are being equipped differently this evening than they have. So it's incumbent upon you to begin to think about, okay, is Joe Bob really focused on the doing or focused on understanding and expecting the target outcome? So when you start using language that's really focused on outcomes rather than activities, be prepared for some shock. Because the stability that's required by big companies has people focused on the activity performance rather than outcome delivery. Because there's a long string of reasons for that, but it's just one of those truths. So Frederick Taylor was a management thinker who thought about functional decomposition, specialization, optimization, and Peter Senge is a writer about organizations, and we're still dominated by Frederick. And Peter Senge is being up. So you will find his impact show leadership literature everywhere. So for Anthony, the key here is this is a different framework for thinking about and evaluating and executing leadership. So when leaders actually begin to focus on outcomes rather than process, you can't throw away the process, but where the focus is, when that's on outcomes, what happens is the processes become more natural and they will automatically self-optimize. That's a longer conversation that we can have later, but the key is that understanding that many of the mythologies that we live out of and that are oftentimes documented are in fact counterproductive. So any other questions, comments, protests about this? Because I want to move from questions about content, because what we've been speaking about is the content of your pitch. Okay? All right, so it'll be a little bit easier when you think about. So what I'm going to do is to give you a framework for what is typical pitch events. Now, I spent a couple of years as an enterprise architect. Anybody know what an enterprise architect is?
Systems architect for like the database and the structure of the information flow.
So that's a fairly popular view of enterprise architecture. So can you believe this? When I was an enterprise architect at Safeway, I was a bit of a renegade. So I focused on the enterprise. What a novel idea. I didn't focus on technology. I said, what are the target outcomes that we're trying to produce as an enterprise? And say, what are the constituent target outcomes? And when you do that target outcome decomposition rather than the process optimization, you get interesting new stuff. Something bad happened? Do we have an earthquake and I didn't? Okay, so So let me go through this. So let's say you've got a staff meeting, and you've got 10 minutes to tell your story about your particular project. Okay, so here's the way in which, if you follow this architecture, the investors, managers, directors, executives naturally resonate with what it is that you have to say. They may not agree with it, so sometimes it causes the glass to explode. So sometimes that happens, but you will have a higher likelihood of getting them on the same page. So the first thing that you want to do is to address your big idea. And you've got 25% of your allocated time that you can spend on that. So you figure out what the numbers are. So the first thing you hit is, what's the big idea? What's the structural breakdown? What's the problem we're going to solve? Blah, 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 blah. Everybody got that? So the next thing is, you've got a limited amount of time to say, here's the resources, here's the money I need to get the best outcome from solving that big idea. Okay? I haven't talked about the solution. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. That's okay. Bear with me. So then you say, okay, with this money, we're going to produce outcomes, milestones, work product. We're going to have a prototype. We're going to figure out what are the outcomes that you're going to produce with the resources you've just asked for. So intellectually, what's happened is that when you say, here's the big problem, immediately the listeners are going to go to, and how are you going to do that? Okay. Here's where you say, we figured out how to do that. Now, for us to be able to execute on this how-to, we need these resources. And here's what we're going to do with those resources. And as you're moving through this process, you are naturally building comfort. So imagine that one of you is planning a vacation with your spouse. That's hazardous duty. Okay? But if you take this and you say, our big idea is to take our 2-year-old and our dachshund on a beach vacation somewhere in the Caribbean. And so she says, okay, and she comes up with the answer. So the big idea is that we're going to go to Little Dick's Bay in the South Caribbean resort place, and it's quite okay to have a dog, and they love having kids. They've got a special place for kids. And by the way, they got babysitters, and so we can go snorkeling and fooling around in the countryside. So you say, okay, that's the big idea. We're going to Little Dick's Bay. And then you say, okay, here's how much money we're going to need to go there. And then you say, oh, we're going to break down how we're going to spend this much money on airfare. And so you see how this breaks down? And so every layer you go through this, there's more comfort emerging. Now you get down here and you say, here's the benefits that we're going to experience by going to that resort in the Bahamas. It's not the Bahamas, it's the Virgin Islands. So you probably know where it is. So what happens, here's the benefit. Okay. All right, now the two of you, you've got a connection. You've now got something to go on. And now, okay, so just to make sure that we're clear, here's all the things that we're going to do, the actions we're going to take, and the outcomes we're going to produce to make sure that we have the great time that we expect. So can you see how this kind of, it tracks with how people learn stuff? Making sense? So,
in the structure, you're giving the big idea, and then you jump to asking the money without telling them which is the value getting first.
So that's what happens when you do that is that you have to make a claim here that the big idea, the structural breakdown, we have figured out how to fix this problem. But you don't tell somebody that how to do that. So why would you ever want to think about that? So yeah, go ahead. Arthur?
Just thinking, you are presenting this in terms of resonance.
Yes.
Imagine what kind of mathematical curve will reflect your structure. So my big idea goes up. Then money I need, usually it means in their comprehension, that goes down, right? And then what will I do with it? Maybe it goes up again. Our risk get paid goes even higher. Our risk again is even higher up. So you can actually build up every step higher up.
So one of the things that you need to understand is if you're going into a staff meeting to present a project proposal, the managers, the leaders, the decision makers in that meeting, they're sitting with anxiety. What's their anxiety about? They're the bosses. The reality is they're sitting with anxiety, wondering how much money do you want? So when you say, here's the big problem and we figured out how to fix it, and oh, by the way, it's going to take $2 million, you've now the question. They may or may not like it, but you have now planted a question in their brain. What are they going to do? How are they going to achieve the target outcome? And what are they going to do with the money? So what is, anybody have kids? Okay. Ever remember saying when your kid was like 3, 4 years old, put your listening ears on? When you make that claim of value, right up there, we have figured out how to solve the structural problem, how to make it easy for you to assess vacations in 5 minutes. Say, we figured out how to do that. Here's the resources we need to accomplish that target outcome. Now, here's what we're going to do with those resources, because that's the second part of the question. How are you going to do it? So here's what we're going to do with it. Here's the money we're going to spend on training. Here's the money we're going to spend on development. Here's the money we're going to spend on communications. So then I say, so at some point, we're going to complete the project, complete the product, and it's going to go to market. That means it's going to go into implementation. And it's in that implementation that the investors begin to see their payment accumulating. And they're either going to get the immediate return in an enterprise context, or they're investors and they're waiting for a liquidity event. But in both cases, there's a natural cascade. And when you get down to here, the anxiety is gone. And what they want to do is to see, okay, now I can raise up all my concerns and say, oh, Anthony, how are we going to do? Boom. And you say, well, here's what our team is structured like. And that team has got the capability, they've got a track record of performing these outcomes. Do you see what I'm getting at? Is this making sense? So if it doesn't resonate with you, it won't resonate with anybody else. So yes, ma'am.
So if I need to
Yes.
am I looking at, if I have 10 minutes, 10 slides? To cover
You may have 20 slides. How fast do you talk? Use one. So you have to remember that the slide's only purpose is to support what you're going to say.
What if I don't have the opportunity to say it before I can say it?
So that all depends on how much courage you have.
Is it normal that it's only 10 minutes for a pitch?
Yes, oftentimes it's less. Oh, wow. So what we do in the session is equip you to tell your story in 2 minutes. So that feels like that's an unnatural act. So I have a friend of mine who did a start in Pleasant Hill. You probably don't even know where Pleasant Hill is, but it's over by Walnut Creek, which is over there somewhere. So he's got this product called Syncy. Now Syncy makes it possible to do merchandising on the web. Little spinny things you see at a grocery store and the shelf tags and all this kind of stuff. Have you ever seen any of that on an e-commerce site? No. What you see is an inventory listing. They're very boring and really stupid. So what Synki does, it makes possible you have the same functionally equivalent, web-appropriate kind of attention-getting and information-providing resources in what's otherwise stupid. So he says, I can't tell my story in 2 minutes. Impossible. I said, come on, I'll teach you. And so we went through the very same thing that we're doing here this evening. And after about 3 weeks, he figured out how to tell the story in 2 minutes. To a pitch event in San Francisco together. He goes off to the restroom. On his way back, he bumps in the hallway. And somebody in the hallway is a Keiretsu Forum investor. And he says, what are you doing here? So Michael says, well, I was thinking about presenting here in a couple of weeks, but I was coming to kind of get the vibe. And so the investor says, tell me your story. Give me your pitch. And so he had just completed his 2-minute pitch. And he said, oh, this is an opportunity for me to do what I've been doing with Dave. Great. So Paul Twombly, who was the investor and a very good friend of mine, but he didn't know I knew Michael. He says, can you meet me at my office in Saratoga on Monday? Michael had been trying to get meetings with investors for 9 months. And Michael is a graduate of Babson, one of the best entrepreneur schools in the world. So he took that, and he was just completely dazed. So he said, of course I'll meet you on Monday. Well, dummy, he is already scheduled to go to Boston on Saturday. Oh, so he had to call up Paul and say, I can't come and see you on Monday, and he was dying. And he uses the same pitches and comes to Boston a week later with $2 million in commitments. Because he was able to use that little tool to be able to acquire enough interest. Now, this isn't something that, well, it's the kind of thing that can work. It's a useful tool, but you have to realize that you're setting up the next appointment. And how do you do that same kind of thing in an enterprise context is a longer conversation, but it still plays out. So is that helpful? So sometimes they're 10 minutes, sometimes they're 2 minutes, sometimes you may meet somebody on the street. If you can't tell somebody your story in a meaningful way that goes through all of these 5 steps in 2 minutes, you will have missed an important opportunity. Even if the opportunity is to learn more about the concerns that particular investment has. Okay? Yes?
Yeah, so the case where they want to see it before you can say it.
So if that really happens, the best thing that you can do is to have a narrative that follows along with this. And so if you can do that I'm going to have a slide of that in a couple minutes, but I think we're going to run out of time. So the key is...
No time limit. It's all yours.
Okay, so, but I don't want, I want to honor their time. So, there's a lot more of them than me, so I can stay here for a long time. But the issue is, when you script out a 2-minute presentation, it will change your life. And you can take that 2-minute script and you create somebody. Now, all the time, I have a problem here over and over and over. So this investor group or this leadership team wants me to present in blah, 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 blah frequency. The reality is the reason that they have developed that is because so many people before you have done such a bad job, they're trying to give you guidance that they can understand and count on. What you take is you see these bullet items, and you can, once you have created that 2-minute script or that 10-minute script, you can rearrange those in a way that harmonizes with what you've been asked for. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? So, anybody here a musician? Who's a musician? Anybody? Any piano players? Okay, so when did you learn to play piano?
When I was
6, 7 years old, yeah. So what happened when you're learning those is you get these simple songs. And the simple songs, the piano teacher wants you to play them exactly as they're written, right? So when you do that, it feels oftentimes really awkward and rebellious nature. I don't want to do that. So what I'm giving you is a song that when you play according to this phraseology of the song, when you master this song, you will be equipped in no end of ways. Does that make sense? So the best jazz musicians, which are fundamentally traditional, are trained. I didn't make it up. It's just it's a structural problem. It's the way the world works. Okay? So this is a roadmap that if you follow this roadmap, your likelihood of resonating with investors will go up automatically. But it's not going to be a guarantee that you're going to raise money. But there is one thing that this will do, which is if you're speaking to a group, it will polarize the group. Polarize the group? Oh, that's terrible. Because that means people who don't like what I'm doing. That's terrific. The thing that's the killer for most entrepreneurs is that they have this large band of ambivalence. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I'm into my portfolio strategy. What you want to have is people who say, yeah, that just fits like crazy, or that's really stupid. Don't try to win the stupid people. The people who think what you're doing is stupid, let them think that it's stupid. It's okay. Because you can't win. So I've spent years as a sales guy, and I had a terrible bad habit. And hopefully this will convince you it's a really bad idea to have this habit, which is I'll never forget going into Lockheed Aerospace in Burbank, 1985. There's a room about this size, and so I'm selling computer-aided software engineering. It was a really hot topic at the moment, and I'm talking about all the features and functions of the product and how cool it really is. And when I got all done, all of the techies in the room were, yeah, man, great, gotta do this. So there was a guy older than me now who was sitting in the corner of the room. And he's way back there in the back. He kind of raised his hand. He said, yes, sir, can I answer any question for you? He says, I don't think so. He says, I think you fundamentally misunderstand how Lockheed works. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. So he said, what you've just proposed is that we're going to improve the productivity, reduce my headcount by 25%. Did you just say that? I said, yeah, that's really great. And he said, I don't want to hear anything about that. It's time, you can go home right now. And I'm the decision maker. So clearly I was being baited. But I took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is really terrible. So what he said was that our political stature at Lockheed is based on headcount under my control. And so you want me to give up 25% of my people? And so I did the back thing. And I realized in the moment that I had created a problem that some of you may create with the best of intention. And so he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to dig you out of the hole that you just dug. But he wanted to see me grovel. And he said, what if you had said the following, I would be right on board. He said, what you can do is not reduce, but you can improve the number of things that you can actually produce with the people you've got. You can deliver better value to your customers. The other thing, so you just need to be aware that those kind of things are possible in the things you're suggesting. So reducing headcount is oftentimes not a good idea. The other thing is there was another, I was meeting with Transamerica, and I had a group this size. There were 4 people scattered around who didn't like the idea of software engineering. Software was and they didn't want any part. And so what I got sucked into was dealing with the naysayers rather than the 40 other people who said, let's go make this happen. And I spent a half of those 40 people's time trying to convince these 4 people that software engineering was a socially acceptable premise. Stupid. So the same thing can happen to you with investors. Don't try to change their mind. Find people who agree with you. Does that make sense? So this is the structure. The thing that we're going to close with is preparation. Now, those of you, I don't have the link handy, but I will try to, when we send all of this stuff out to you, I'll try and find the link. So there's a link that tells about the guy Kawasaki was an interview about how Steve Jobs prepared for his presentations, his Macworld announcements. If he had an hour-long presentation, he would spend at least an hour for every minute he was speaking. At least an hour, oftentimes 2. And he would work with other people and go round and round and round. How did that phraseology work? Should I choose different words? So when you write your 2-minute script, that's why it's a life-changing experience. Because you will have to throw away words that you will wonder, how can I get rid of that word? Because you have to be able to read it in 2 minutes. And I'll give you a couple minutes. So you know ahead of time, are you going to have presentation aids? If you can tell your story without presentation aids, you're in great shape. If you need them for other people, that's fine. But practice it without presentation aids in 2 minutes. Q&A. Will you have an opportunity to get Q&A or feedback? What is your target outcome for a meeting? So when I was, as I mentioned, I was an enterprise architect at Safeway. I was relentless about making sure the target outcome that's part of the agenda for every meeting in which I would allow myself to participate. This is one of the most important leadership attributes that you can develop. It's you're setting, here's the agenda for a meeting, and here's the target outcome. And you have that be clear. If something else happens, that may be okay, unless that turns out to be habitual. And then nobody will pay any agenda or target outcomes. But when you begin to focus on target outcomes rather than activities, that's another thing that will change how you work in a large company, or even a small one. Who's the audience going to be? If you don't know your audience, it's just like me stumbling into this executive in my Lockheed presentation. I wasn't prepared to deal with the kind of questions that he asked. You need to be prepared for everything. So every item needs to be examined 6 ways from Sunday so that any question somebody asks you about one of those bullets, that you can respond immediately without hesitation. And that's why the preparation was so important for Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs gets a question in any setting, he's got 42 answers. Okay? That's the way he lived and worked. Tailor and focus whatever your presentation is to the people that you're going to be speaking with. So I made changes to my presentation this evening because we had entrepreneurs and corporate representatives. They wanted to be able to speak to and to tie those two worlds together. And hopefully you'll give me some feedback about it. The last thing that I want to speak to is rehearse, 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 rehearse. Now, I've been a public speaker for a long time. 2 things I hate. One of them is script. So writing a script for a is painful. But I do it when I need to. Rehearsing is another thing. The talk that I'm giving tonight is a small variation on something literally hundreds of times. And really prepared, and I'm delighted with the level of engagement that you guys are all putting into the game. So so it is now, gosh, it's 8:30. So I want to wrap up within 10 minutes. Everybody okay with that? So, but important. So who's a good reader? What was your first name? Cheryl. So, could you do me a favor? And you can. It's really okay to say no, with no harm. So what I'd like you to do is, I see. Okay, so what I would like you to do is read the script, and somebody else keep a timer. Okay, so just come on over wherever is comfortable so you can see it, because there's about 5 slides. So when you get to everything in between, I'm going to click to the next slide, and you just kind of go with it, okay? You look like you can have some fun with this, so have fun with this. Okay, so take it. So who's going to be the timer? Okay, so Jacqueline, you be the timer, okay? So, go. Wait. So, all right, are we ready? Okay, go.
In my last stint as CEO of a public company, I led the growth of shareholder fourfold in 30 months. That allowed me to look for opportunities where obstacles to change are structural. For instance, the administrative overhead forcing customer referral systems has blocked their creation and adoption. So-called loyalty systems today are little more pattern-based bribery systems. They do virtually nothing to foster an efficient and effective customer referral ecosystem. Even with that structural flaw, loyalty systems constitute a current spend in excess of $45 billion. Incumbents are aggressively seeking fresh ways to combat commoditization price pressure. Sample Code has created a patented solution which enables incentive-based referral support systems to be implemented from the neighborhood auto repair shop to the global reaches of resorts and everything in between. In order to take Sample Code from its $600,000 run rate to a $3 million run rate within 12 months, we forecast the need to grow capital in the amount of $2 million within the next 120 days. In exchange for notes totaling over $2 million, the owners are prepared to allow the notes to be converted to equity, amounting to 40% of the outstanding shares of the company. Details will be shared as part of the due diligence process. Our next call is Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Our business plans calls for the funds to be deployed for 6 specific purposes: customer care expansion, $600 million; solution scalability extensions, $300 million; marketing expansion, $250,000; sales team expansion, $250,000; alternate sales channel development, $250,000; and finally, solution functionality enhancements, $250,000. Our first priority is driving growth that our customers brag about. That first priority makes the second priority possible, driving growth that our investors brag about. Our third priority is preparing Sample Code to be the high-value acquisition target for larger key industry players. The loyalty industry did buying spree for the next 3 to 5 years as new capabilities emerge from innovative companies like Sample Co. We expect that today's second and third tier players like Gonzo, Loymont, and Framtech will pay 12 to 15 times trailing 12-month revenues. That means that planned Sample Co should be priced near $200 million in 40 months. This holds a potential return of 60 times that. Our team, C-level team, comprised of industry veterans, our market is currently growing at $45 billion at 8%. Volatile M&A activity expected to continue. Our product, mobile web and print media, incents repeat purchases based on referrals. Novel solution is attractive to PR outlets, and our clear transaction linking pricing simplifies sales to merchants of all sorts. Our financials are conservative and implemented to ease acquisition. We prudently are fosters trust across the board. Obstacles to our competition: we have a solid lifestyle and component patents. In our IP practices, we have a rigorous employee and contractor rights agreements, access to control.
That's it. So time.
3 minutes and 6 seconds.
So see how hard.
Because I don't even know that industry.
No, so the thing that I wanted you to see, which you'll get samples of this, was when I wrote that, I actually thought that I could read it in 2 minutes. So when you get the presentation, you'll see the next cut, the second cut, where I wailed on that first draft. So when I got done with that first draft, I thought that's the least I can say and still get the message across. What I did with the second draft was convince myself that I was wrong in that. Oh, sorry. So there you go. Thank you. So my point of doing that was to give you some sense of how difficult it is, but how important it is to get it that brief, that tight, so that people can understand. And so you have to make decisions about what to throw away. So some of those really wonderful superlatives, okay, okay, well, probably we can do that. So it gets you to the point where it's kind of like being physically fit. You know, it's hard. It's hard work. And I don't like doing it. Yes?
The speed at which something that you've read is different from when you're generating it in an author. You're suggesting, like Steve Jobs, that you've just rehearsed it basically. So yeah.
Yes. So what we really need to do when we're raising money or getting support for a new product or a new project or a new endeavor or the reignition of something that died 2 years ago, it doesn't matter. Anytime that you're trying to secure the resources to change, there's no substitute for preparation. And oftentimes you just think, I don't have the time. It's you do have the time, you just need to make decisions about where you're going to spend it. So this is about one of the things that ties into leadership programs. So there's issues about alignment. I'm going to make a quick passing about, does anybody know about strengths finders? Who? Raise your hands. Oh, wonderful. Oh, man, that's an unusually large percentage in a group this size. So Strengths Finders is a resource for helping people find out what their strengths are. And when I put that to work in my last company, it was January of 2001, where I had everybody in the company, there was 20 of us, everybody went through that exercise, and I did something really novel, which was I posted, I didn't do it, but required that everybody post their 5 strengths or description on their cubicle or their door. What happened was within 30 days, the ambient bubbling that always emerges with more than one person, gone. People quit coming to me to ask detailed questions because detailed stuff is not on my strategy, individualization, activation, that kind of stuff. It can happen, but don't ask really detailed questions. Otherwise, you'll have me talking for 2 hours. And you won't get the information you want. So people began to self-select. And when we did the company, which I expected to shrink by 20%, grew 30% as measured by revenue. And we did no more marketing, no more sales. But the ability for people to understand and give grace to each other, because instead of me being a jerk because I didn't have the detailed answers, people realized that here is an assessment that didn't care about who I was or what. It said, Dave, detailed stuff to do. And so when people self-selected, so that's my one commercial for Strength Finders. I can't advocate it strongly enough. But you take those two things together and you use those kind of resources to help you select and align your team, whether it's a startup or it's a department at Intel. It doesn't matter. Those kind of resources are about the only thing that matters, which is people. So the only thing that can get things done is people, unless you happen to be on an assembly line. So thank you very much for your cooperation, your collaboration, and your spirit. So I will be around for a half hour or long. So actually, we'll be around. So if you have any questions that you want to talk about individually, I have business cards up here that if you want to pick up a business card. But so any last closing questions?
You'll be sent emailing this.
Yes. So we'll do that, and there's a couple of other links that I want to, would like to, and also to send you a little excerpt from the section on CEO roles and responsibilities, because when you look at that, which is one of the things that we do in our class, that you see that the CEO's job, and even other levels, so CEOs are, you can have CEOs at more than one level. So the job is more complicated than and more than mythology would have you believe. So CEOs have far less freedom and flexibility than the mythology tells us. So, and that's a message that I'm trying to get out. People who like a CIO or a VP of marketing have less in their decisions than it would appear on the surface. So when you understand and have some appreciation for it, you will prepare differently. It's just the way human beings work. And the fact that you're here tonight means that you're really well outside the thousands of people who got an invitation to be here. So thank you and congratulations. This is new stuff. Yes.
Dave, thank you very much for your talk.
You're
I
welcome.
just wanted to ask everybody to join thanking Dave for your talk. Thank you.
This has been a great opportunity for me. I've learned a bunch of stuff, so thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Questions?
Can we reach out to you on emails? And
So you can find me LinkedIn. And so if you send me a LinkedIn invitation, tell me, so don't give me that, I'd like to add you to my blah, 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 blah. Say, hey, I really enjoyed your talk and I'd like you to be part of my network. And then use it. Reach out to me whenever you want to, okay? So that's an open invitation to everybody that's here. I mean, so my job is to help you be successful. And however I can, given available time, I'm eager to do that. Okay?
thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Okay, so